Okay. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. Today we're going to go over Saruktavali chapter 11. The previous chapter was on vices. It was a very interesting chapter, and that recording has been uploaded. So does anyone have any questions on the last chapter? No. Chapter 11 is about Sant. So this is a chapter that talks about the qualities of the sants and praising the sants, and then it also shares the other side of the qualities, so of the people that are kind of more described the opposite. So Kaviji starts off with saying that a sant does two things and two things that they don't do. One is when someone says bad words to them, they do not hurt another back, and then they do not forward their own gun to other people or others' avgun to others. So there's two things that they do, two things they don't. Whenever someone says something bad to them, that's something that they don't do, then is hurting the next person back. Yeah, I guess that one's a bit self-explanatory there. A sant consciously remembers Akal Purkh and Guru's wisdom. They then accept and instill that wisdom, and then they keep pao, the loving fear of the vices as they continue in life. So Bhai Manpreet Singh Ji said in their Vyakhya that obviously this is for someone who is still in their sadhana, because someone whose sadhana has been complete, they also do not even have any fear of what is to come and what is to go. But while we are in that past, they are in that process of remembering Akal Purkh, instilling that wisdom and keeping that fear, like that good sense of fear, to stay away from any type of vices that might lead them astray. Sants manifest these three and eliminate all other entanglements. So the entanglements could be things such as pap and pun, and liberation from our own karmas and other things. So they see all outer actions, whether it's at home or outside, all as the same, so samdrishti, but they still seek a preference for stillness. So this was a really beautiful kind of point in the text where they said, like, look, they don't really get bothered whether they're going outside or whether they're inside, but they still have this preference for a stillness, for a quieter life, for a more still type of life. And I think that was really beautifully said in that part over there. Especially in this day and age where we kind of go like, well, if it mean, what does it mean to be in Gristi? Does it mean that we live like really busy lives and work life and all this? But someone who's on this path, they still seek a quieter form of that same life. So by doing seva of sants, we can overcome these obstacles of the past and the future. So Bhai Manpreet Singh Ji said, how can we then fix the past and the future? And what we can consider is, in the past, our own karmas tainted us from the perspective of truth. So by doing seva and by following this path, we realize that it was all actually hukam. And so then even the past comes in order because we look back and we realize, wait, that was all in hukam. So then the past has always been corrected, and then the future is also corrected because we know that everything that will unfold is also according to hukam. So by doing the seva of sants, we become so humble. We start being in nimrata, that we start then following that path of saj and then towards hukam, that the past and the future all get resolved. In the same way, drinking water from the Ganga river, firstly, it quenches the thirst. So that means the current needs are also fulfilled. But then because it's considered like a spiritual river and that it cleanses our karmas and stuff, in that way, it's like symbolic of the fact they believe that that also cleanses the future karmas. But for us, it's more like an analogy of the fact that understanding hukam resolves our present moment, the past, and the future. Some more qualities then. So sants do not show any hatred to anyone, but rather they want to share bliss with everyone. So even if one harms a sant, they still share bliss. And they gave this really beautiful example that, like the sandalwood tree, even though it's getting axed or with a machete, and that is causing its destruction, still that weapon gets to, really it's graced by the fragrance of the sandalwood tree. So that is the type of nature of these Santajan. Kaviji says that I surrender to these sons who see oneness and Parmeshwar in all beings. Because, other than that, if someone even cuts us off in the road or says something ill towards us, we start seeing them as someone separate to us while we're in that sadhana, of course. But then we start practicing that, hang on, that is Parmeshwar, I am Parmeshwar too. But Santajan, that is their nature, that's become their nature. So even when someone is doing bad to them, their automatic reaction is still that they want the bala, they want good for the other person automatically. That's just in their nature, like the sandalwood tree. So like a man is considered beautiful when his body is beautiful, but the ornament of even such a body is when they have good virtues. But then even if they have that good body and the good virtues, what good is that if they do not know their own self? So Kaviji says that one should realize their own self and then the knowledge of all. That is, that if I am, what am I? If I am, a jot, then everyone around me is also that same jot. And that is where we should be going towards. When we realize that we are all the same jot, then we should also be going towards forgiveness. Now here, Bhai Manpreet Singh Ji explained just a little bit more and said, if someone acknowledges their mistakes, then obviously we can continue in that company and we can continue in that type of sangat. But if they don't acknowledge a mistake, then there is no need for us to be kind of being doormats or continuing to be together. In that instance, what one does is usually they acknowledge that this is also a Kalpurk, but there is a charitra being played through them. So they don't hold any anger towards them. They don't dislike them at all. They can see through the fact that they are being played just as they are playing us. And so they create that natural distance from them. And so that is the way that we should be going towards forgiveness, is kind of seeing everyone in the moment, but also understanding the care as well. So like cleaning a mirror, instilling knowledge makes our mind shine clean. Like a lotus flower, a Gyani enjoys the world, but this does not overpower them. Like gold, which does not suffer when it is being molded, but only when it is compared in weight. I thought that last example was quite beautiful. Because a sant does not suffer pain when being led by hukam, that is by the external factors, by being fashioned. They suffer being entrapped by their own vices themselves. And we went through this in a previous chapter when we went into the importance of Jeev, the apni kirpa. So they aren't suffered by whatever kirpa is happening on the external world. What they are suffering the most by is, am I allowing the kirpa from inside, Jeev the kirpa, or am I letting vices overpower me? Then this is further elaborated. Even if they are made to suffer, even if they are tortured by others, they do not experience suffering by that. Because again, they're seeing Akal Purkh in everyone, and they're seeing that care. And that's how we can even see in Shaheed Singhs in our history, that's what's happened. Rather, they fear their own vices, because like poison inside, that could lead them to astray from their path. The only thing that can harm them is coming from inside, from their own Antyakarana. So Santajan in sadhana do not fear or suffer by what is happening around them. They consider this as hukam. Rather, they suffer and fear only from their own selves within that. Some more beautiful examples, like a bee that goes into a thorny flower to collect pollen. It's so attracted by that fragrance that it's not deterred by the thorns in its path. So in the same way, that intoxication of Nam, the sons just go towards that, and they do not fear or suffer by the thorns or vices in their path, and nor do they focus on these in others. So practically, some of the ways that we could see this is, say if someone is really absorbed by Nam, and they might notice that people are taking advantage of them, and a few times like they will not allow that to deter them from their path. So they will skillfully kind of handle that, gracefully handle that. Another way could be, for example, that money might come and go, or there could be hardships in life. Whatever it is that they're seeing, those thorns in life, they don't let that deter them and be a reason like, oh, this is why this is all false, or this is why Dharam, is not it. In fact, they are just so intoxicated by Nam that they say, despite all logic, despite all the thorns that are coming up in my way, despite all the reasons my brain is trying to pit against me to go against this, I'm going to keep following that fragrance. And next they say, Santajan, do not hold on to bad deeds of enemies against them. In the way a line is drawn in water, it does not remain. So a line drawn in water just does not exist. It's literally for the moment, and then it's gone back again. And that is the same way of Santajan is, it's just in that moment, and then it's happened, and in that moment it's gone. So they don't hold on to that. In comparison, by Manpreet Singh Ji shared that the world holds people against even their smallest mistakes. So even if someone has made one mistake in their life, and it's the smallest mistake or a big mistake, they pin that against them, and they hold that against them, that they label them as that, and they're shunned from society. Like, that's the way that the world works. But Sanjan are not like that. They only hold on to anything like that just in that moment, and then it's let go on again. That's why they see someone as Neet Nava, new, themselves and everyone at each moment. When Santajan make the slightest mistake, then whether the public notices or not, it's like a scratch. However, they themselves never forget what they've done. So this is another really important part, is the way that they're acting their life is not because of external factors like being shunned from society or what people will think. Whether people notice it or not, and they say, oh, you did this wrong or you did this right, that's just like a scratch on the surface of them. But anything that they've done themselves, they will carry such a weight to it, and really try and like make sure that that doesn't happen again. That's the guiding factor, is their own self-awareness, because they're so imandar, they're so honest in themselves. They don't need someone else to be telling them that. So during sadhana, a sant keeps this fear of their own deeds. They also keep loving fear that they do not blemish their guru or their path in any way. This is being guided by internal wisdom from them rather than externally, such as fearing punishments by the community. Then there's some more examples. Just like sandalwood is cooling, but even more cooling than that is the moon. But even more cooling than both of these is when a person goes into satsangat. There is nothing more cooling than that. Then Gaviji says, a family with one son who has many good characteristics can do much more than a family with hundreds of sons, but they have bad character. The light of one moon illuminates a whole sky, but millions of stars can't compare. In that way, only a Vidwan, one who learns of Brahmvidya, a Brahmgyani, can know the fragrance of Nam, this cooling bliss. And then they've referred to a historical aspect as well, in the way the bliss of being with Ramba, who was a beautiful angel, can only be known by Indra. So they were the ones that were with Ramba. Only they were able to enjoy the bliss of being with her. A person may store much wisdom, and they might recite many texts by memory, so they might have it gunned. However, without realization of it, it's like a ladle that's being stirred in many flavors of dishes, but it never gets to enjoy the flavor itself. So whether the ladle's being stirred in a sweet dish or a salty dish or a khichdi or kheer, the ladle doesn't know that flavor itself. So that is what it's like to be immersed in all these texts and remembering them off by heart, but not actually coming towards that realization. We're not actually able to enjoy the fragrance of it. Not every mountain has gems. Not every elephant has a pearl. And that was interesting for me. I didn't know elephants have pearls, but yeah, there's a thing called elephant pearls. But not every forest has a sandalwood tree. And in this way, not every village or place has a sant, has a marbush. And so in that way, oh, that will come next. The person with a pure intellect has two desires, either to renounce the whole world and just to be able to, live liberated from it, or to have increased Maya so much so that they can actually, share more of that, live in this one, and live in that type of abundance lifestyle. But both of them ultimately towards the path of Dharam. Sons will always wish well for others so they can walk on the path of Gurmat, always. And that point, I guess, is reiterated a few times in this chapter, that they will always wish well for others. They don't hold on to anything. They don't hold on to any hate. They just always want that they also get to follow this path. So this has been the nature of the sons. They are cooling and soothing like the moon. There is another example. There is only a very few select trees where an elephant will shelter under it. So it's usually quite a large and dense tree. However, you'll see plenty of monkeys on, all the trees pretty much. And so Bhai Singh Ji shared that a sant is not by the outer bana. So, there's plenty of monkeys out there, but there is only select jeev that are actually considered to be, following this path of sadhana and towards sant. And I guess over here, I feel there's like so many different examples that Kaviji is sharing, but I guess they're really just trying to share the different angles of how we can understand the life and the qualities of what Sanchan are. And they're just really sharing that in all these different ways. So for example, over here, they've spoken about the fact that it's very few of these that exist, like the elephant that's under a select tree. Then they've gone further and they've said such a sadhu is rare who can remove a person's entrapments. And so what are these entrapments? It's agyanta, so the lack of knowledge, darkness, ahankar, karam. These things are entrapments during this spiritual path. And then there's so few sadhu that can actually help someone to be liberated from these and then to realize their own self. And yet Kaviji describes there are so many who will actually further trap people in these things, like do these many Sukhmani Sahib, to do these many this thing, or do X, Y, Z, and then you achieve it. So there's so many that are actually trapping them even more, and so few that can actually help them realize their own self. And then there's some more analogies. So like Dvij, which was translated to Brahmins historically, are pleased with kheer, or how peacocks are pleased with the rain. Santajan are happy when they can be of help, and they're happy when they're seeing that something good is happening for the other person. That is what makes them happy. In comparison, a foolish person is happy when they see others in trouble. And then this next point was also really beautiful. So there are many people that beg, and there are many skeptics, but there are very few people who are charitable. And then there are very few people who can give satisfying answers. Some more qualities. So sons don't share their own positive aspects with other people. So they might even notice that they are there. It's not like they're looking for them, but they'll notice it's there. But they don't go out of their way to share that or to compare that with other people. Nor do they share the faults of others. So even if they can see the faults of others, they don't get out of their way to explain them to other people, like, oh, this person is X, Y, Z. They, in fact, try to keep their honor and respect. So they don't get out of their way to fault others, nor do they go out of their way to share their own positive aspects. Whenever there's a chance to give, they will run to be of service. They run to be charitable, and they run to be giving and parupkari, they're parupkari. However, whenever there is a need to beg and to ask, they run away from such situations. Even from their own guru, like that thing of, okay, I need to ask for something, they will even run from that because they only want to be in humble service to even their own guru. So these four things actually bind the mouth and therefore the actions and the manner in which they engage in the world, because they're constantly, contained by these parameters. So then there's another example. So like a toy is thrown up, when a child is throwing a toy up like a ball, and then gravity makes it fall down. And in comparison, wheat is thrown on the ground, but then it rises up. So there's two different directions. A sant sees the wealth or pleasures as all coming or falling. They're going up or down. They've just accepted that as a matter of life, a matter of the play. Whether they have less or more, whether they're going up or down, whatever that life situation is, they are not moved by it. They remain still. When they experience pain or suffering, they accept that as the outcome of their own goddams. So there is no resistance about it. When they are experiencing suffering, they accept it ultimately, like this is the outcome of my own goddam. This is hukam. And they still remain still despite that phase. So a sant's mind does not get disturbed. It's immovable. And they've come to understand the play and the nature, that things just come and go. They go up and down. That's just the nature of it. And they're not moved by that. The next stanza, they share that there are three types of people and then one type of supreme type of person. And so they've described that. So one, the lowest type, is the person who is always trying to accumulate wealth. And they don't even share this, so they're just accumulating wealth. And I guess you could really just point that to the most basic form of human, is just that sense of safety and just that sense of accumulating. Secondly, the next type of person wants to have accumulated wealth, but then they know that that alone is not enough. And so they also want to be respected by others. I found it very interesting when I was revising this chapter that it actually goes so much in parallel with psychology as well, because that second stage is, it comes after the first stage of safety. The second stage is that sense of belonging, that you realize that wealth itself is not enough. You want a sense of belonging with other people as well in the community, because that aids in the survival. So thirdly, the great type of person, so they're giving this in order. So thirdly, even better than those two, are the ones that actually realize that being respected is the wealth itself. So even if a person has a lot of wealth, they realize wealth alone won't take me that far in life, but being respected, being known, being held in the community, that is where, I'm supported throughout life. And then who is the fourth one? The Mahapurush is considering actually all of these as samdrishti. So that is actually all the same. Whether there is wealth or there isn't wealth, whether they have respect or they don't have respect, they've risen above all that and they do not waver. So if they're being disrespected, it doesn't concern them. If they're being respected, it doesn't concern them. If they have wealth, it doesn't concern them. If they don't have wealth, it doesn't not concern them. Kaviji summarizes this stanza saying that, look, everyone has gun and avgun, and they will have that until they have a day. So the day is the physical body. Until we have the day, we're going to have gun and avgun. Some have more gun than others. Some have more avgun than others. And even the most beautiful and fragrant rose flower has thorns. So the aim is not to kind of purify this day, the physical body. But it is definitely something to consider of our mind, of where we want our perspective to go towards. Then Kaviji says, like a lake is not considered beautiful without a swan. A place is not considered beautiful without suns. That place is most beautiful where suns reside, where people that are living and abiding by Guru's wisdom reside. And that is where chapter 11 ends. And they're saying that is how their own poverty ends, really. That's the thing. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Okay. So in the Q&A, one of the questions was that I'm experiencing changes in the way I perceive others. So I'm starting to see oneness in people. I'm not suffering as much. But when I was asleep, I had a dream that I was in conflict with another person. So how do I know if my sadhana is actually working? Bhai Singh Ji answered that Mahapurukhs have shared with them that instilling wisdom comes in 3 stages. First is in our Jagrat, our waking, our conscious stage. Then that same wisdom is carried into our sleep stage. And then thirdly, it's also carried into the stage of sleep, where there are no thoughts, no dreams, no conscious thought. And that wisdom that's been instilled remains even there. So they said this will happen when we do abhyas, practice every day in the waking stage, in that conscious stage. And over time, it will gradually seep in deeper into ourselves. So to the point where it's not affecting us even in the dreams, and then to the point that it even clears our Antyakaran. So then Viji said, some people were also asking me what Antyakaran is. So this is what keeps us in the circles of life and death. Broadly speaking, we refer to it as man. So we just label it as man. But the Antyakaran is the man, the chit, ahankar, and the buddhi. So this is considered our internal body of the Jyot Swarup, of the soul. So this is actually considered a body, soul body, and this is the polluted body that we're talking about. It's because of this we go through life and death, because that is polluted. When we ask, for example, where is the man? We start pointing towards our head automatically, or like pointing to the brain, our head, that this is where our man is. Or some people might say that is where our heart is. But really, the man, the chetana, the buddhi, everything, it's actually throughout our whole entire physical body. And science also supports this. So when the Antyakaran is polluted, we cannot manifest internal wisdom. We are blind, we are ignorant to what is inside. But by following the bhajan of Mahapurukh, by doing the seva of those who are doing this seva, by doing abhyas of Gurbani, we can make our mirror cleaner, and then we can come to see our Nij Swarup, the realization of ourself. And so after that, there was a question. They said, okay, so I'm starting to see this Antyakaran, and I'm starting to see where the dirt is, this mal. But how do I know if it's becoming pure? How can I see this process of it becoming clean, from pure to clean? And so Bhai Singh just answered, if we are still seeking to know if this Antyakaran is pure or not, then consider it's still dirty. Because at that stage, there is no question. It's only the clean state itself. The clean mirror does not question, am I clean? Once there's that stage of cleanliness, then there is no question left of whether it was pure or impure. It's just none of that exists. Next question, where there is no mirror, so say there's no mirror, there's no sense of this mirror needing to be cleaned or not, there's no desire to become a sant or not, then how do we scale or measure the progress we are making? So there is none of that distance, then how do we measure the progress? Bhai Manpreet Singh Ji answered, when there is no desire, then that is Brahm Swarup itself. So Brahm Swarup itself, then we again are not questioning or needing to make progress anyway, it just is Brahm Swarup itself. However, if there is even a desire to reach this state, that I want to reach this stage, this Swarup, then that stage is not reached. It's such a riddle, but it's so beautifully said as well. So this desire to reach that state exists even in the sants during the sadhana. That's what's keeping them staying on that path. But once they become what they were seeking, once they merge, then there is no question of progress or what is. Other question? Why did the Antakaran get polluted in the first place? How come some people have less pollution and more pollution in that body, in that self body? The answer was, it is all by hukam. So by hukam, we all receive the ego. From that ego, we all then individually did all sorts of karams and stored more polluted intellect, and that intellect over time got more and more ingrained onto our antakaran, into our chit, into our memory, and then we keep coming into the life and their cycle, and we keep going, and that's the play. And then some people are going towards a path of awakening, and some people are deep asleep. And that was the end of the Q&A. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.